because of my extension efforts and vice versa. And so I would encourage folks, I would meet with them, I would point out the synergy that can be found in collaboration. Even if it's only a temporary one-time thing, hey, would you mind working for the next 6 months on this? Alice needs to write a guide sheet on this aspect of vegetable production. And it seems that you're doing some work in the genomics of this particular vegetable. Is there something that you could maybe share that the public could read and appreciate, and it would be a good advertisement for the division as well as your work? And so these kind of custom-made opportunities that we would offer people, they started to take up on those, and they would do those. And so the collaborative effort and the mentality started to occur a lot more quickly and without input from me or the dean.
Okay, we have a question from the online audience. So how do you plan to measure your different teams' goals and initiatives and ensure accountability to meet these goals and deliverables?
Could you read that again?
How do you plan to measure your different teams' goals and initiatives and ensure accountability to meet these goals and deliverables?
Well, anytime you set some goals, you need to have measurables. You need to have those stated pretty clearly. And this morning, in our meeting, we talked about expectations, workload expectations. Individuals that have a certain percentage of research, the expectations we would have for them would be a certain number of publications or a certain number of grant proposals that they would write. For teaching expectations, certain number of classes. And as I mentioned earlier, in the past, it was a nebulous. There was no number associated with it. But now the provost and the president of the university is asking for a little bit more definitive accountability. And so when I meet with the faculty that has a research extension appointment, I would review their previous year's a list of productivity and things they accomplished. Bob, looks like you're doing great on extension. You're doing a lot more than a 60% extension appointment would ask for. But then on the research end, you only submitted one paper for publication, or maybe 0 papers. What can we do to enhance that aspect of your workload expectations? And we would work with them. It's not that I would meet with them just once a year, but we would set goals. And so we would set a goal with Bob. Bob, within the next 3 months, could you come up with an idea on how we can enhance your research grant writing? Come up with some ideas. Let me work with you. Even if it's pairing up, and again, this is where collaboration comes into play. Bob, here's Sally. She's at the other end of the spectrum. She's writing many more grant proposals and not doing much teaching. Can you work with her and collaborate on some sort of common project that would enhance your grant writing efforts and help Sally's extension efforts? So that's how I would work with him. And certainly when you follow, or when you have with goals, follow-up is critical. But again, I use the example of kids in the sandbox. I respect all faculty. They're adults. They're very productive. They're in a profession that they love. They love to teach. They love to do research. They love to work with the public. And as you show them due respect and loyalty to what they're doing, they in turn will want to help for the greater good. And so it's not like I'm shaking my finger at them, and I've never done that, but you know, it's just to inform them. Information is power, and they need to know why we're coming at them with this request. Whoever wrote that out there, I hope that answered the question.
My first question was already answered 2 questions ago, but I want to follow up on what you just said. The measurables for, say, publications, for example, now are becoming more sort of chiseled in stone type of method. How do you address the facts of different sciences? So, in other words, you have somebody that's working in a science where they do a lot of modeling, and they crank out lots and lots of papers. And you have another science where it may take you 2 years to collect your samples and process and get to the publication stage. How would you address that when people are now starting to say 2 publications a year, 3 publications a year, 4 grant submittals a year, that type of stuff?
That's a great question, and I've dealt with that. Short answer is I go to bat for them. Field scientists, we're at the whims of nature. They put a rice trial in the field, and it's a very too wet of year or a very too dry of year, and that first year's crop is destroyed. That puts them a year behind what they initially wanted to do. Diseases or something coming through livestock can affect that. I take that into account. And when those individuals are questioned, hey, your workload effort is below what we expect, I go to bat for them. Bob is trying his best. He got the grant funded. He put things in the field, and things didn't work out. So from my viewpoint, I go to bat for those individuals. If the dean comes along and says, hey, how come Bob is only getting 1 publication out, whereas Alfred, doing these modeling, cranks out 5? Well, Bob has to deal with the weather. Alfred doesn't have to deal with the weather.
It looks like we have one more question from the online, from Remray. He's asking that the college has a goal to double in 5, means 5 years, which include student enrollment, also external funding. How would you contribute to accomplish this goal from the research perspective?
Well, double funding, assuming individuals are doing their due efforts in terms of are they utilizing all potential funding sources available to them. I know, and I'm sure it's here, but again, just on the experience I've had at Missouri, in the college, we receive an email at least once a week of new funding opportunities that are available with links for those funding sources. Now, granted, they may not all be appropriate for a specific discipline, but to let the individuals know what's out there. Are you utilizing this particular funding source? NIFA comes out with this. NIH comes out with that. NSF with this. USDA with this. Are you utilizing all potential areas? And this is what I've worked with Bob. Bob, can you utilize these funding sources? If you don't know how to write an NSF grant, work with Sally. She's done that successfully. And so, in terms of student numbers, if they're declining, again, what we had faced, form an ad hoc committee of why are our student numbers going down? What do our exit interviews tell us about our program? Are all of our classes appropriate? And yes, I had to eat some crow. Of course, I thought my entomology classes were the best ones. But in the long run, in some emphasis areas and majors, they didn't need entomology per se. They needed more emphasis on integrated pest management. I had more students coming from arts and sciences, pure biology majors, to my class than the ag students. So I had to adapt, I had to change. And so that's what part of the effort to double student numbers. We have to swallow our pride and take a quick look at ourselves in the mirror. Am I doing what I need to be doing as a teacher? Am I doing what I'm doing as a researcher or an extension person? What can I do to enhance the mission of the division? And in turn, then enhancing the college's strategic plan.
Thanks a lot, and I think that conclude our, oh.
Good afternoon. My name is Noel Estwick.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for the presentation again to add to the comments. I just have a related question to what you were just asking regarding diversifying funding and so on. A lot of my colleagues at other universities, I know, they go after funding from foundations. And what are your comments on funding from foundations in terms of diversifying our funding?
I think funding from foundations, for the most part, is very good. It's encouraged. Sometimes with foundation money, they're going to put some limitations on things. And we need to understand fully what those limitations may be. There may be a certain area of focus in a research area, like the soybean foundation. We only want work done in here, here, here. And as long as we can overcome and address those concerns, if those concerns will not stifle creative input and work, and then I think foundation money is, in many cases, an underutilized source of funding. Yeah. One of the, I've had foundation funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Although I guess